Hello, hello. Are you ready to start dipping those toes into the waters of sleep tonight? Let's start doing that with a story from Charles Darwin. Charles Darwin's Voyage of Discovery. So, let's get right into it. Let's get drowsy together. I have just about 20 or so minutes, so let's get into it. Let's get right into it. With a chapter called A Natural Wonder, we begin. Charles Robert Darwin was born on February 12th, 1809. His family were wealthy and respectable people from Shrewsbury, England. Charles's mother, Susanna, died when he was only 8 years old. After that, his three older sisters helped raise and care for him. And Charles's sisters, by the way, they were very nice, very friendly type girls, but partly probably because he was only raised by girls, he didn't have a lot of male influence into his life. He grew as a very friendly, very nice kind of person, but also kind of very shy and closed off. So the question here is, how did he go from a very, very shy and kind of introverted also person to a man who would go on to challenge the church, challenge the established way of things back in the 1800s? And challenging the church back then was kind of a big deal. What did the church do years ago when somebody challenged them? They would put them on a stake, they would put them on fire if they were witches, or they would stone them. They did all kinds of things. The church is very can be very very good and it can be very very bad. So challenging it, going from shy and introverted Darwin to big badass Darwin, how did he do that? Well, that is what I kind of want to explore with you tonight and in the next several few episodes of Darwin. How did he go from shy and introverted to a man who would do all these things? So, without going on too much of a tangent there, let's continue. Let's find out together. Charles's father, Robert, he was also loving but strict. Charles's grandfather was Erasmus Darwin, a famous philosopher, and his father was a doctor. During his early years, however, Charles's own brilliance did not immediately shine through. Few realized that he would grow up to become one of the greatest scientists who ever lived. Although Charles was not particularly good at schoolwork, he always loved nature. He liked to spend hours roaming around outside, examining plants and insects, as well as seeking out shells, birds' eggs, and pebbles. One of the earliest drawings of Charles shows him clutching a plant that he had grown in a flower plant. So, as a kid, Charles used to do what he loved, to plant seeds, to grow plants, to go outside into the forest, take insects from there, and even then he would start collecting his collection, going with his heart, going with what he loves. When Charles turned 9 years old, he was sent to boarding school. By now, his passion for natural history was clear. At times, though, in this natural history school, he got frustrated having to study subjects such as Latin and Greek classics when he would have preferred to be learning botany and geology. And that is kind of what happens when somebody who that is what happens when your heart is pulled one direction. His heart was being pulled towards botany, towards animals, towards being a naturalist, someone who, an explorer, an adventurer. But having to study all those subjects at school, Latin and Greek classics, Those do not sound very, very interesting. And that is why, by the way, Elon Musk, he had created this school back just a few, mm, maybe about 20 years ago. He created this school when school kids would go, and the only rule there would be this: study only what you love. So, for example, if you really, really love physical exercise at one point, then you do sports, you play basketball, you play football. If instead you really love painting and drawing, then all day long you must only paint and draw and do that. Or maybe you like to paint and draw and also play basketball, then you do those activities. In this school, wherever your heart pulled you, that's what you did. But unfortunately, this was not in Elon Musk times, this was 200 years ago, so Darwin did not have Elon Musk to help him out there. So he had to study the Latin and Greek classics. Poor, poor Darwin. As a child, Charles enjoyed many hobbies. He liked to watch birds, read books, and build all kinds of collections. He and his brother even set up a homemade chemistry lab in a shed. Speaking of chemistry labs, this is something I did just a few months ago. I think you'll find this interesting. There was this chemistry exhibition here in town in Olbo, and they had liquid. One of the guys there was showing me about liquid nitrogen. What is liquid nitrogen? Oh, it's this liquid that's very in at a very, very cold temperature. If it's poured on, let's say we take this umbrella. If you pour liquid nitrogen on this umbrella, it would freeze down. And this guy was telling me how, but if it's poured on, if just a fraction of a second or just 2, 3 seconds, nothing's gonna happen. But if it's 5 seconds, then it freezes. And then I thought to myself, I kind of want to try that. I want to feel what it feels like. So I asked him, hey, how about you pour it on my hand, but just for 2, 3 seconds? He thought about it, and yeah, we decided, why don't we try it out? Let's try something different, something new, something exciting. So, uh, you may be asking, did my hand froze? Well, actually, you're seeing it, it's not frozen. So, hopefully, it went well. Uh, what we did was, I had my hand at a little bit of an angle so the liquid could flow down, and it felt so fresh. Just before we poured the liquid down on my hand, I was kind of thinking, should we do it? Should we not? Should we experiment? Should we not? Should we test it out? But we had to try it out. I had to try something new, something exciting. So the liquid went down my hand for just a couple of seconds, feeling afterwards so fresh, so invigorated by trying this new thing. It was fun. And that is kind of one of those things with going out of your comfort zone, going out into the adventure zone. It is scary. It's always scary, but you just follow your heart. If it feels like something you want to do, follow your heart, follow your courage, and you just get to feel so alive when you do that. So much. And Charles later described their experiments, doing those chemistry experiments in a shed, which is also something that is not very. The reason I was telling you this story, by the way, is because doing chemistry experiments in a lab shed, in your homemade shed, I know from my own parents who are chemists, that is a very dangerous thing to do. Chemistry is a dangerous subject. It's all about toxins and acids and all kinds things that if they get on your hand, they can make some bad they can have some bad effects. They can not just freeze your hand, they can burn your hand. Bad things. So, but Charles, he, from a young age, he was starting, even though he was shy and introverted to begin with, he was starting to go out just a little bit from his comfort zone. And as a result, he described their experiments in the lab with his brother as the best part of his school education. And that's how it feels like when you follow your heart in whatever direction it leads you. It it feels as the best thing ever. Now, growing up, Charles dreamed of a career in biology or natural history, but his father had other ideas. When he was just 16, he was enrolled at Edinburgh University in Scotland to study medicine. Charles, unfortunately, really disliked his new subjects. If he was going to be a doctor, Charles would need to perform operations. Yeah, that makes sense. At the time, however, patients were not put to sleep or given pain medication to help them cope with medical procedures. Charles was shocked by the blood, the gore, the suffering that occurred during surgery. He gave up his studies without finishing the course. After Charles left Edinburgh, his father proposed a career instead for the Church of England. So, Charles, as a man who wants to follow his heart, follow obviously something that has to do with either insects and birds or botany. He wanted to do that. But instead, his father, he wanted him to be a doctor like him or be a churchman, follow a respectable career in those times. And back 200 years ago, typically, when your father wanted you to do something, what happened? Children just followed their parents. There was no such thing as picking things up for yourself. For the most part, you followed your parents. So, what did Charles do? Unfortunately, he kind of felt obliged to do that, to do what his father wanted him, to not follow his heart, which I can imagine felt painful. Charles was dispatched to Christ's College, Cambridge, to train as a clergyman. While he was there, Charles met, however, a botany professor named John Stevens Henslow. The pair soon became close friends. A colorful collection. Charles was not especially religious, and yeah, knowing what he did with the church, he was not especially religious at all, and was in no hurry to work in the church. After classes, he decided to. After classes, however, because Charles wanted to continue his botany and his insect and bird learning skills, he devised a two-step plan to getting to that. So, what was his two-step plan? Well, before I reveal that, let me just check our time. As I mentioned at the beginning, we have just about 20 minutes. Yes, we have 9 minutes more left here. So let's continue a little bit more. So, what was Charles's two-step plan to go from just studying about Christ and angels hanging out in the clouds to studying about birds and insects and things like that? Well, here's his two-step plan. Step one, discuss science with this botany professor, Professor Henslow. not just bring things from Christ to the Beatles that he wanted to actually talk about. And step two, he would go walk in the countryside and add to his Beatle collection. So that's what he did. He would in the during the daytime he would discuss botany and plants and oak trees and redwoods and pine trees with this botany professor. And during the night or evening time, he would collect beetles. Charles searched far and wide. Charles searched far and wide for rare and interesting species. His collection would become so extensive that scientists are still finding new species within it today. Nearly 200 years later, they are still finding new species from those collections that he made in his studies back then. And that is it. If you are feeling like your heart is pulling you towards a certain direction, just follow it. It will do so good things for you. You will never go you will never go wrong by following your heart, that is for sure. Then Charles gets the invitation. In August 1831, Professor Henslow sent Charles a special letter. Its contents would start a chain of events that would not only change his life, but influence society, biology, and science for centuries to come. What was that big ass letter? The letter was an invitation to join the crew of a ship about to embark on a surveying voyage around the world. The captain was searching for a naturalist to go on the journey. Henslow had suggested Charles. Would Henslow, by the way, have suggested Charles? If Charles did not, if Charles had decided to just stay in his little comfort zone and not talk about botany, not go out into the forest and follow his heart and collect all these beetles? Of course, now the professor would have never thought of that. If Charles, think about that for just a second, if Charles had not followed his heart and collected all those beetles back then, that letter about going on a world voyage, he might have never gotten it, would he? Of course not. So, follow your heart. Yeah, the letter was an invitation. Fortunately, he did that, so he got the letter that was an invitation to join the crew of a ship about to embark on a surveying voyage around the world, and the captain was searching for a naturalist to go on the journey. Henslow had suggested Charles. Charles immediately began to persuade his father to let him go to sea. However, Dr. Darwin did not want to let Charles go around the world. He thought that was a bad idea. And back then, as we said just a couple minutes ago, what your father said was typically a rule. You had to follow it. And so Charles really had to persuade his father. Otherwise, he would stay all his life in the church, never going around this world voyage and seeing the things that he saw and following his heart to his truest passion in life. So, how did he do it? How did he persuade his dad to let him go and follow his heart? Well, that right there sounds like a good place to end tonight's episode and continue with that tomorrow. So, with that said, I wish you I wish you a very good night tonight. If you're falling if if you're not feeling sleepy quite yet, there is no pressure with with these episodes that at the end of the episode you gotta feel very very sleepy and very drowsy and fall asleep. Nothing like that. You fall asleep on your own time when you feel like it. So if you're feeling sleepy and drowsy, you can go to sleep, or if not yet, you can just watch a few more episodes and do that. I've definitely uploaded at this point quite a few episodes, and I'll continue uploading these, helping you fall asleep at night. So, my name is Vukan. I wish you a very good night tonight, and we'll see each other very soon. Bye.